Top 9 Most Terrifying Natural Disasters in the History of the World. In the world we live today, there are so many disasters varying from earthquakes to volcanic eruptions, and perhaps we're all secretly scared of the day we might be caught in on. Some are even fond of fascinating such moments. In today's video, we will be looking at the top 9 most terrific natural disasters that have ever on Earth. You'll be surprised by how dangerous natural disasters can be. 9. Typhoon Tip. Pacific typhoons are generally more powerful than Atlantic hurricanes because the former have much more water over which they can gather strength. Unfortunately, on October 12, 1979, the tip made history with the lowest air pressure ever recorded where fishermen in the open Pacific. Tip sank or grounded 8 ships. One of these was a giant freighter that the storm broke in half. Not only was it the strongest cyclone, but it was also the largest ever recorded, half the size of the United States, excluding Alaska. Many of the fatalities were fishermen in the open Pacific. It was a very unfortunate day, as the tip also sank 8 ships. One of these was a giant freighter that the storm broke in half. Not only was it the strongest cyclone, but it was also the largest ever recorded, half the size of the United States, excluding Alaska. 8. The Lake Nyos Limnik Eruption. Volcanic eruptions are known natural disasters of Earth that are capable of wreaking havoc on cities at a time, but perhaps you've not heard of limnic eruptions. Limnic eruptions aren't an exception, but they are, in fact, more dangerous. Limnic eruptions are one of the most bizarre natural disasters known. The criteria required for one to occur make them very rare. Lake Nyos is in a very remote area of the Cameroonian jungle. It is not very large, only 1.2 miles by 0.75 miles, but it is quite deep, 682 feet. Under the bed, a magma chamber is leaking carbon dioxide into the water. On August 21, 1986, the carbon dioxide at the bottom of the lake suddenly erupted all at once, 1.6 million tons of it, and released a cloud of carbon dioxide from the lake. This cloud, being heavier than air, hugged the ground contours, blew out of the lake at 60 miles per hour, went downhill throughout the area at up to 30 miles per hour, and displaced all the oxygen in several small villages, suffocating between 1,700 and 1,800 people, not counting all their livestock. The force of the gas expulsion also blew out the lake water itself in an 80 feet high tsunami that stripped the trees, shrubs, and soil off one side of the shore. 7. The 1960 Chile earthquake. The most powerful earthquake ever recorded struck near Valdivia, Chile, on May 22, 1960, at 2:11 p.m. local time. As many as 6,000 people were killed, and even many more would have been had it not been for Chile's preparedness for earthquakes and the remote location of the epicenter. Eyewitnesses reported that the entire world appeared as if God had seized one end of it like a rope and slung it as hard as he could. It caused 82-foot-high waves to travel down the Chilean coast. Hilo, Hawaii, was destroyed. The quake possessed twice the surface energy yield of the 2004 Indian Ocean quake and equaled 178 billion tons of TNT. This would have powered the entire United States, at 2005 energy consumption levels, for 740 years. 6. The 2003 European heat wave. Europe is not accustomed to hot summers. Give them a break. Hot summers almost never happen there. But in 2003, they got hit with one that would make the southeastern United States, or the Australian outback, sit back and marvel. In Europe, most of the homes built within the last 50 years, before 2003, were not equipped with air conditioners, because none had ever been needed. Now, well over half of them have equipped themselves for the future. There were at least 14,802 deaths from the heat in France alone, most of the old people in nursing homes or single-family homes without the ability to cool off. The heat dried up most of Europe, and severe forest fires broke out in Portugal. Some 2,000 people died there from the heat. About 300 died in Germany, where the weather is usually very cold to delightfully mild, 141 in Spain, where the temperature actually gets into the 90s Fahrenheit once in a great while, 1,500 in the Netherlands. 5. The Great Flood of 1931. When we talk about natural disasters, there's no way to avoid the Great Flood of China in 1931, which caused the death of millions of people. It's the deadliest natural disaster ever recorded that occurred during the winter, spring, and summer of 1931 in central China. There are 3 major rivers draining this area: the Yangtze, the Yellow, and the Huai. All three flooded catastrophically because the winter snowstorms were particularly heavy in the mountains around the river basins, and when spring began, all this snow melted and flowed into the rivers. Then the spring brought particularly heavy rains. All this water swelled the three major rivers, especially the Yellow River, and because they drain a very large, very flat area of China, somewhere between 3.7 and 4 million people drowned or starved. Nanjing City, China's capital at the time, became an island surrounded by over 100,000 square kilometers of water, more area than the state of Indiana or all of Portugal. 4. The Tunguska explosion. On June 30, 1908, at about 7:14 a.m. local time, an asteroid or comet plummeted over the lower Tunguska River in Krasnoyarsk, Russia, a remote area of Siberia, and detonated at an altitude of 3 to 6 miles. It exploded with the energy of the largest thermonuclear bomb the United States has ever tested, the Castle Bravo bomb, 10 to 15 megatons. Thankfully, no one was killed because the nearest eyewitnesses were about 40 miles away from ground zero. For 100 miles around the epicenter, people were blown off their feet by the shockwave, their clothes were scorched off, windows were shattered, and trees were seared to death and blown over. Iron locks were snapped off barn doors. This detonation was more than sufficient to incinerate the entire population of Japan, the Sao Paulo metropolitan area, the Buenos Aires metropolitan area, or the entire United States' New England megalopolis from Boston to Washington, D.C. 3. The 1999 Bridge Creek F5 tornado. On May 3, 1999, a tornado outbreak lasting for 3 days began with a bang when an F5 formed at about 7:12 p.m. local time. This tornado was the most powerful windstorm ever recorded on Earth, at 318 miles per hour. It killed 36 people, and 8,000 houses were obliterated. It shredded large vehicles with debris and then wrapped them around telephone poles, threw them completely through warehouses, whipped 2x4s through wheel hubs, and pine straw all the way through 8-inch thick pine trees. This was the first time that the local weather stations reported over the radio that if residents were not securely underground, they would be killed. Hiding under mattresses in bathtubs, in ditches, or under overpasses was insufficient. 2. The 1815 Tambora eruption. Now, let's go back a little bit in time to Tambora on the Sumbawa Island in South Indonesia. You're probably guessing this is a volcanic eruption? Yeah, you're right. It erupted from April 6 to 11, 1815, but the worst of this was at the end, from 10 to April 11. The Tambora eruption was 52,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. All the vegetation on Sumbawa was incinerated or uprooted, mixed with ash, and washed out to sea. The trees formed rafts 3 miles across. Pumice ash does not mix well with water, and one of these rafts of ash and wood drifted all the way to Calcutta, India. 92,000 people were killed, most by starvation, the largest loss of life caused by a volcanic eruption in the recorded history of humankind. 1. The 1958 Lituya Bay Mega Tsunami. Now on our top 1 natural disaster is the 1958 Lituya Bay Mega Tsunami. Mega tsunamis were only theorized until July 9, 1958, when, in Lituya Bay, a very narrow fjord of the Alaskan Panhandle, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake shook 90 million tons of rock and glacial ice off the mountainside at the head of the bay. It dropped off all at once, almost vertically, and landed as a monolith into the bay's deep headwaters. This generated the highest wave ever recorded on Earth, 1,720 feet. The wave traveled from the head of the bay out toward the open ocean, and because the bay is so narrow, the wave was funneled up the mountainsides. It snapped all the trees off at 3 to 6 feet above the ground, everywhere up to 1,720 feet high around the bay. Most of these were 6-foot thick spruce trees. There were a total of 3 fishing boats in the bay near the mouth, and the wave sank one, killing the 2 on board. One of the survivors estimated the length of time between the wave's overtopping of the island in the bay to its arrival at his boat as 2 seconds. If this is true, the wave was traveling 600 miles per hour. It stripped away all the trees, grass, and soil down to the bedrock and then dissipated in the open ocean. Fortunately, not so many life was lost compared to some of the natural disasters on this list, but it still remains the most terrific natural disaster to ever occur in the history of mankind. Now that I think of it, I realize how terrific it would have been to exist in one of those disastrous periods. Starving to death after eruptions definitely wasn't the best way. What could have been done to prevent such disasters? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more knowledgeable and historical videos. Thanks for watching.